The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, thank you again for joining us. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. We are going to unmute Pat Abernathy. Hopefully you joined us and you're back on the line.
And I think it's still on. Go ahead, Pat. Can you hear us?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We're so sorry. If we would just go back one slide, just in case, because we don't know where we got kicked out.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So we were talking on this slide about the importance of hand washing, and we want to make sure that we're washing our hands before and after handling any food, before and after meals, and that we're following the basic hand washing principles, and that everyone, all of our teachers, staff, children, and everyone that comes into our Head Start programs are washing their hands properly. Next slide, please. So everyone in our Head Start programs for the City of Chicago should be very familiar with this and have these posted everywhere your facility is washing hands, so in your sinks and all of your hand washing sinks. This is something that should be posted. And it's very important because it also goes over the steps of hand washing. Next slide, please. So along with hand washing, we want to talk a little bit about gloves. So gloves do not replace hand washing. So even though we're using gloves in our Head Start programs, we want to make sure that we're washing our hands before we put the gloves on and that we're following the hand washing procedures in addition to using the gloves. Next slide, please. The next slide we're going to talk about is manual dishwashing. This is very important. So for this slide, you're looking at a 3-compartment sink. So all of our sinks should be 3-compartment if we're washing dishes. Next slide. And then also, here are the manual dishwashing procedures, which are located in our food service requirement packet, as well as our Dominican University Head Start Nutrition Services Sanitation packet. This is very important when you're washing dishes manually, and then you'll see in this slide it gives you, there's actually 5 steps. You're using a 3-compartment sink, but there's actually 5 steps to that. And so it's a scrape, wash, rinse, sanitize, and then air dry. And then the other most important thing is making sure that you're using the proper sanitation solution. Next slide, please. So with that, depending upon which sanitation procedure you're using at your site, it could be chlorine bleach, it could be iodine, it could be quaternary ammonia. You need to make sure that you have these test strips at your site and that you want to check the date on the label to make sure that they're current, they have not expired. And then you want to make sure that your staff are trained to use these properly and that when they're sanitizing the dishes, they have the appropriate sanitation solution in the sinks. Next slide, please. So here's some food service staff do's and don'ts. So we want our staff to wear clean clothing. We want them to be washing their hands frequently and appropriately. We want to make sure that they're using head coverings and using gloves. And then some of the things we don't want them to do is wear excessive jewelry. We want to make sure that they don't have excessively long fingernails or false nails or nail polish, all of that which could potentially cause foodborne illness or contaminate the food. Next slide, please. So again, here's just another hand washing slide. As you can see, we've already talked about hand washing several times throughout this presentation. We could never emphasize the importance of hand washing and doing it correctly. So with that, we just want to mention that we want to make sure that our staff are wearing clean, washable clothing, and that they're not wearing their street clothes when they come into our Head Start programs as they prepare our food and they're in the kitchens. We want to make sure that they're wearing clean clothing, and that again, hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. Next slide, please. So here we want to make sure, again, we talked about this, head coverings are very important, so they can either wear the chef's hat or the head covering, the cap, or a baseball cap. So as long as they have their head covered is what we're looking for, so we want to prevent any hair from getting into the food or on any of the food prep equipment. Next slide, please. And then again, this is a jewelry slide, so you can see some of the pictures of what we don't want. We don't want any large pieces of jewelry, jewelry, earrings that are really long and hanging down, rings, anything that could, especially with the rings, they get, food gets on them, and if they wear them, that could be a possible contamination. But they can, in fact, wear a band as long as they take it off when they're washing their hands. Smaller earrings don't pose a threat, so they can wear that type of jewelry. Next slide, please. And then here's a really big one that we want to emphasize in our Head Start programs. Only food service staff should be in the kitchen. Next slide, please. So, but we do understand that our sites are being used by other staff, and we just wanted to remind people that, sometimes teachers need to grab an item, the director might want to boil water, the staff might want to put their lunch in the same refrigerator, and that teachers' aides are coming into the kitchen. Next slide, please. And when they do that, anyone that comes into the kitchen must wash their hands, put on a hairnet. Even the directors, porters, or caterers, anyone that comes into the kitchen, we need to make sure that they have a good understanding that they have to follow the food safety and sanitation procedures as well. Next slide, please.
Tricia, I have a quick question about staff putting food in the refrigerator. Should they have their own refrigerator?
You're going to see that in our next slide. Yes, we do recommend that the staff have their own designated refrigerator. That's one of our best practice recommendations, as you can see it on the slide.
Yes.
That's how it would be best to have that. But, we do understand that there may be a situation, or maybe their refrigerator is not working at the time. We have seen that where they might put it in there. Then we're asking them to still have a designated space for that with the label, that, everything else that they need to put on that food. But the best practice is for them to have their own storage space.
Can they have it would it be best practice if they have to put it in a refrigerator with the other food, that it's like in a container, Tupperware?
Yes, that would be the best, right? The ideal is they bring it in with a sealed container. They have a tape on it. Mrs. Smith's, lunch, do not put it in there. I can see some of the concerns that we may have, maybe with food allergies. So yes, those are concerns. So the best practice would be to, have your own refrigerator. But when they have to, it definitely should go in a container with a seal, with a label on it, a very clear label. And I would even go as far to say that if they're, maybe they're making sure that they're not bringing other foods that could possibly contaminate other foods, even with a sealed lid on it, because that might be, cause for concern. But again, we would really like them to have their own refrigerator.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about infant formula preparation, and as well as breast milk formula, breast milk procedures. So the main thing, again, is we always want to think, we want to wash our hands before we do anything in our Head Start program, right? We want to wash our hands. And then before we prepare anything or start preparing, we want to make sure that we clean and sanitize our workspace. So that means wash it down with soap and water, sanitize it, make sure that area is very clean and sanitized. And again, in our Dominican University Head Start food service sanitation packet, we have procedures on how to clean and sanitize surfaces, especially in the kitchen or for preparing formula. So here's a good handout that we have that's available on the DFSS website under our nutrition handbook. This is a great poster, a learning tool for our staff. It goes step-by-step procedures on preparing infant formula. So you want to, as you can see there, there's 11 steps. You want to make sure you wash the bottles and the nipples, and then you squeeze the water through the nipples. And number 4, you want to sanitize the bottles. And so when you look at number 4, you want to make sure that you're doing that correctly. So all of the nipples, the bottles, the caps, all of that, if this is a procedure that you're using, you want to make sure that that goes into a pan and or a pot, and that you boil that, you bring the water to a boil for at least 5 minutes, okay? And then you can go further down, and there's 11 steps there, and you want to make sure that you follow all those steps. including letting the everything that you sanitize air dry. And then you want to, fill your bottles, put the date, the label on there, and then you want to make sure, next slide please, there's a bottle guide here. We have this available on the website as well, that this could be posted at your site for training or just for, reflection and making sure that everyone's following the proper procedures. You want to make sure that all the bottles are labeled with the following: the name of the child, the date and the time that the contents were pumped or prepared, whether it's breast milk or formula, and that you specify the contents of the bottle. And then very, very important is, discarding any content remaining after 2 hours after feeding, and then discarding the prepared formula after 24 hours in the refrigerator, and then your breast milk after 48 hours, or the breast milk that has been frozen after 2 weeks. And then you also want to keep in mind, for the safety of the everyone, and especially the child and the infant, is you always want to wash your hands. So hand washing is extremely important, when preparing our formula, feeding our children, and in operating our Head Start programs. So you want to make sure that you're washing the bottles and sanitizing them and air drying them, as we talked about in our handout in the previous slide. So these handouts are all available on the DFS website under the nutrition content. This is part of our handbook. So these are all available for you to print out and have for your sites, which I recommend doing and having available for our staff. Next slide, please. And then just to let everyone know, for more information about the slides and the content we talked about today, so obviously I already mentioned that we have our nutrition handbook on the DFS website. We have our food service requirements. We have handouts and posters, and then if you want to get that food safety and sanitation booklet, you can contact me directly, and I will be happy to email that out to you. Okay, and I think that's the end. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions? You can type it in, raise your hand. All right. Well, we don't have any questions. Oh, contact information. Contact information for Dominican? Okay. So we'll make sure you get that information through the, because you can always contact DFSS, and we'll put you in contact with Dominican University.
So they can.
So the question, they can call me, or no, email me. The question is, do you guys have your own nutritionist? It depends on the site. I'm not sure what site that is. But we can discuss all that a little later. But you can contact me at Sharita, SHARICA.webb, WEBB, at cityofchicago.org.
All right. So now we're going to move into, thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move into the milestones for this particular area. Again, if you have any, raise your hand on the screen or either type it in. So we're going to move over to Latrice Berry. All right. Do we have a question? No. Okay. It says we're connected to audio. All right. We thought that we might have disconnected, and we certainly hope we have not. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We're afraid now. So Latrice is going to talk about milestones.
Okay. Hello. Today we're going to talk about the milestones for health and for safe environments. First, we'll talk about health. We're not going to talk about all the milestones, but you should review your milestones regularly to make sure that your agency is on target for all the milestones that you should be working on. So the first one is complete analysis of third quarter PIR data. That means that your agency should be reviewing your PIR data And if you're not up to date or in compliance with anything, make sure you have a plan in place so that you can work on those areas and target the areas that you're not doing as well in. And always, if you need any support or guidance, please reach out to your support service coordinators here at DFSS to assist you with that. Then the next is to compile a list of returning and transitioning children that need health services and submit it to management. So do this so that you can make sure and you can monitor where all your kids are to know which kids are in compliance and which kids may need medicals or dentals or hearing and vision so that they could be in compliance with transitioning. And that's transitioning in or transitioning out. Complete required child screenings, including hearing and vision, and submit COPA documentation within 45 days. And so we all know that if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Make sure your documentation is in COPA so that it can be monitored. Complete referral and follow-up for children with identified needs and enter documentation into COPA. So make sure you are documenting, like we say, document in COPA so that we can monitor it as well as you can monitor it. But you have to make sure we are documenting. Monitor health services screenings, including hearing and vision, reports in COPA, and update COPA health case notes. So you should be doing case notes monthly. Make sure you're updating your case notes monthly as they're being reviewed by your SSCs. They should also be reviewed by your delegate agency staff. Children who scored within the referred categories must be sent to disabilities coordinators within 5 days. So once children are having developmental screenings, please make sure that any children that scored in the referred service are referred to the disability coordinators.
Within 5 days.
Yes, within 5 days. The next one is replenish your first aid kit supplies. Then
how do they know what to put in their first aid kit? Is there a list, or will there be a list?
We have a list. We're updating a list. As a matter of fact, we just pulled the list, the standards for daycare centers from the Illinois, the DCFS, and the City of Chicago. We're compiling them to see which one is missing, and the only thing I can say is that for the City of Chicago, they don't require a thermometer and the antiseptic cream or solution. I'm working right now with Dr. Torn. We're discussing this because he feels that this is extremely important, especially in the travel kit. At the centers, it will be okay because you use soap and water, but the travel kits, you may not have soap and water, but you may need something to clean off the babies if they bruise themselves or scrape themselves, just first aid kit. So we're working on that, and our list should be updated very, very soon.
Great.
And complete monthly health report and forward to assigned health FCP SSC by the 5th of the month. So as you know, every month you're supposed to submit your health report and submit it to your assigned SSC. That's for health, nutrition, all things health, and for hearing and vision, and for FCP. Make sure you submit that to your assigned SSCs.
Safe environment.
Safe environments is next. Complete playground equipment and safety checks. And so we just saw earlier how important that is. Make sure that you're completing that equipment safety check, and if you find any concerns, you need to make sure that you reach out to us and let us know what those concerns are. Conduct monthly fire drills. Submit facility improvement plans as needed. And then as you monitor your safe environment for yourself and from Globetrotters, as you find things, then you'll know what you need improvement plans for. But make sure you follow your improvement plans so that all of your equipment and safe environments can stay up to date.
And self-report. If there's something that cropped up in the middle of GT's visit, or when you the agency conducted the last check, if something comes up, self-report it. That way we can get an earlier start.
Right.
A head start, if you may, on fixing those items.
Then conduct tornado drills
In center base.
Yeah, conduct tornado drills, and that's you need to conduct tornado drills twice for center base, and then for home base for home base family child care homes, caregivers need to conduct tornado and fire drill homes monthly. So those need to be conducted monthly for family child care homes. And then complete the daily, weekly, and monthly checklists. And also in safe environments, they have replenish first aid kits. So that's important because it falls under health and it falls in safe environments. You don't want an emergency to happen and you don't have something in your first aid kit that a child really needs. And so I was going to say, if you have any questions, please list them. But in addition, if you have any questions or comments that you think of later, make sure you reach out to your support service coordinators here at DFSS.
We have a question.
The question is, what about home visiting? As far as conducting fire drills or tornado drills and things like that, I would say we would use the same requirements that's in our licensing for the family child care home. So I would go with once a month with the family. That's something that's very important that the family would need to know how to escape if there's a fire drill or what happens in a tornado drill.
All right. Any more questions, just send them through. Thank you, Latrice. All right, so to close out, first of all, we want to thank all of you for being so patient, and all of our presenters. They did such a nice job. Believe it or not, don't you just love those pictures? Believe it or not, we only have one more webinar, only one more environmental health and safety webinar. And we're all crying here. But hopefully for you, these have been very informative. And again, it's given you a head start on the things that we need to do before the fans get here. This is just best practice, and we should be doing it all along anyway. So because next week is our last webinar, what I want to do is immediately following this webinar, we're going to send you a survey link. We want your ideas about anything that we haven't covered that's still outstanding that you want to know about in terms of environmental health and safety. Any of the protocol questions, anything in regards to licensing, or any of the other topics that we've addressed thus far. So please watch out for the survey link, because that's going to be very important in putting together that final webinar. And so with that, again, thank you all for joining us today, and we'll talk to you next week.